Hi there, and welcome back to St. Thomas Aquinas for everyone. I'm Dave Palmer, and thanks again for joining me as we go through the Summa Theologia. We are approximately 40% through the Summa, still have a lot to go, and we are in our last video on the topics of habits, of virtues, and sin. And today we're going to focus in on sin. And the thing I really want to highlight during this video especially is how much all of this ties into the human person. Okay, we are complicated. Remember, the first attribute of God is that he is simple, right? We are complicated. We have intellect, we have will, we have body, we have soul, we have matter, we have appetites and irascible and concupiscible and passions, and there's really a whole lot going on with us. And so when we go off track with sin, it gets complicated and it's ugly. It really is. Sin is ugly. Sin is not the way we were intended. We are virtuous by nature. Remember that? So keep all that in mind as we go through this. Thomas asks in the first part of part 2 of the Summa, question 77, article 5, whether concupiscence of the flesh, concupiscence of the eyes, and pride of life are fittingly described as the causes of sin. If there is sin, and we know there is, if you just pick up the newspaper, if anybody still does that, or go on a website, you'll see sin just all over the place in many, many different forms. What is the cause? Well, Thomas takes, here, by the way, are the 7 capital sins or the 7 deadly sins. We'll go over these more specifically later in this video, but there they are. And that is something you should commit to memory. We should have all these memorized, like the fruits of the Holy Spirit and the 10 Commandments and gifts of the Holy Spirit and things like that. All right, so 1 John 2:16 says, "For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life is not of the Father." Okay, so these are the causes of sin, the 3 causes of sin. And Thomas says, inordinate self-love is the cause of every sin. Now, self-love includes inordinate desire of good. Now, notice it's a desire for good. It's not a desire for something bad. Because remember, goodness and being are synonymous in Thomistic philosophy. Everything is good. Even those things which cause us to sin are good. For a man desires good for the one he loves. Hence it is evident that inordinate desire of good is the cause of every sin. Now, good is in 2 ways the object of the sensitive appetite, wherein are the passions which are the cause of sin. First, absolutely, according as it is the object of the concupiscible. Do you remember the difference between concupiscible and irascible? And secondly, under the aspect of difficulty, according to the object of the irascible part. Okay, so sin is going to tie in to the intellect, to the will, to the irascible, to the concupiscible. Okay, so those same things that are faculties of the human being are also that by which we sin. All right, so concupiscence is twofold. One is natural, and it is directed to those things which sustain the nature of the body, whether as regards the preservation of the individual, such as food, drink, and the like. Things like, going out and having a beer or a hot fudge sundae, right? These are good things, but they can also cause us to sin through concupiscence, right? And, or in regard the preservation of the species, such as in sexual matters, and the inordinate appetite of such things is called concupiscence of the flesh. Okay, that makes sense, right? The other is in spiritual concupiscence, and it is directed to those things which do not afford sustentation or pleasure in respect of the fleshly senses, but are delectable in respect of the apprehension or imagination, or in some similar mode of perception, such as money, okay, or apparel and the like. Okay, when you see this picture of the money, isn't there a certain attraction? It's like, wow, those are $100 bills. That's like $1,000 there. What can I buy with that? I can buy food. I can buy clothing. I can, look like this guy, very stylish. So that is what is called concupiscence of the eyes. Those things that we desire, not nearly natural, but they're kind of like one step back. The inordinate appetite of the arduous good pertains to the pride of life, for pride is the inordinate appetite of excellence. All right? So that's that. All right? So you see how it all ties into the faculties of the human person. Whether original sin is concupiscence. Now, when we think of original sin, we think of Adam and Eve getting driven out of the Garden of Eden to the east. The angel, drives them out after they ate the apple and sinned against God, right? So Thomas says here, everything takes its species from its form. The species of original sin is taken from its cause. Consequently, the formal element of original sin must be considered in respect of the cause of original sin. But contraries have contrary causes. Now, I know this is kind of complicated, but kind of hang with us here. Therefore, the cause of original sin must be considered with respect of the cause of original justice, which is opposed to it. Now, the whole order of original justice, and by the way, original justice is the condition of Adam and Eve at their creation. They had original justice, which means they didn't have any concupiscence. They didn't have an inordinate desire to eat too much or have lust. They didn't have that in original justice, but that's what was shattered through original sin. Now, the whole order of original justice consists in man's will being subject to God, which subjection first and chiefly was in the will, whose function it is to move all the other parts to their end. Okay, now we're talking about the end. What is our end? Perfect knowledge of God. All right, see how it all ties together. So that the will being turned away from God, all the other powers of the soul become inordinate. Okay, this is disorder. This is what happens with sin. Accordingly, the privation of original justice, whereby the will was made subject to God, is the formal element of original sin, while every other disorder of the soul and powers is a kind of material element in respect of original sin. Now, the inordinateness of the other powers of the soul consists chiefly in their turning inordinately to mutable goods. Hot fudge sundaes, banana splits, pizza, sex, drink, beer, right? Drugs, which inordinateness may be called by the general name of concupiscence. Hence, original sin is concupiscence materially, but privation of original justice formally. Okay, so we have form and we have matter, and so does this. You see how it all ties together? Isn't it interesting? All right, whether pride is the beginning of every sin. You probably have heard this before. Pride is the beginning of every sin. Okay, there's a picture of Lucifer, who was the original angel, the seraphim, who could not stand to be obedient to God, so he fell, right, and brought a whole lot of angels with him. Some say pride is to be taken in three ways. First, as denoting an inordinate desire to excel, and thus it is a special sin. Secondly, as denoting actual contempt of God to the effect of not being subject to his commandment, and thus they say it is a generic sin. Thirdly, as denoting an inclination to this contempt owing to the corruption of nature. And in this sense, they say that it is the beginning of every sin, and that it differs from covetousness, because covetousness regards sin as turning toward the mutable good by which sin is, as it were, nourished and fostered, for which reason covetousness is called the root, whereas pride relates to the turning away from God, to whose commandment man refuses to be subject, for which reason it is called the beginning, because the beginning of evil consists in turning away from God. Okay, you see that? We turn away from God and towards a mutable good. But we first turn away from God. So the beginning of every sin is pride, and that's what pride is, turning away and not subjecting our will to God. All right, this is the last article we're going to learn. We're now up to question 84, article 4, the 7 deadly sins, the 7 capital sins. Okay, that's basically the same thing. Man's good is threefold. Interestingly, we're talking about sin, but we're talking about man's good, because sin is inordinate, okay, inordinateness related to the good. For in the first place, there is a certain good of the soul which derives its aspect of appetibility merely through being apprehended, viz. the excellence of honor and praise, and this good is sought inordinately by vainglory. Okay, so there's a picture of a lady looking at herself in the mirror. Vainglory, okay, inordinate love of self. Secondly, there is the good of the body, and this regards either the preservation of the individual, meat and drink, which good is pursued by gluttony. Okay, now this is a creepy picture, but sin is creepy. Sin is evil. So some of these pictures may kind of creep you out a little bit, but they should, because we should be afraid of sin. We should be repulsed by it. It should be gross. It shouldn't be attractive, right? Or the preservation of the species, for example, sexual intercourse, which good is sought inordinately by lust. Now here's a picture of a beautiful woman, seductive. What's behind her? The demons, okay? The demons who are responsible for drawing us into lust. Thirdly, there is the external good, that is riches, to which is covetousness, is referred holding on to that which we have. Now, of course, this is just a little girl, but it's kind of an image of covetousness. The same four vices avoid inordinately the contrary evils, right? Or again, good moves the appetite chiefly through possessing some property of happiness, which all men seek naturally. Now, in the first place, happiness implies perfection, since happiness is a perfect good to which belongs excellent or renown, which is desired by pride. Okay, we hear a lot about pride in our culture these days. Or vainglory. Secondly, it implies satiety, which is covetousness, seeks in riches that give promise thereof. Thirdly, it implies pleasure, without which happiness is impossible, as is stated in Ethics. That's Aristotle. Gluttony and lust pursue. All right, on the other hand, avoidance of good on account of an attendant evil occurs in two ways. For this happens either in respect of one's own good, and thus we have sloth, okay, couch potato, laziness, a lack of a desire for spiritual goods, that's sloth, which is sadness about one's spiritual good on account of the attendant bodily labor, or else it happens in respect of another's good, and this, if it be without recrimination, belongs to envy. Okay, again, creepy picture, envy. Okay, not only like being jealous of somebody because you want what they have, but you don't want them to have it, and that implies hatred of that person, which is sadness about another's good as being a hindrance to one's own excellence, while if it be with recrimination with a view to vengeance, it is anger. Okay, again, these same vices seek the contrary evils. All right, I know this has been kind of a challenging lesson because sin is ugly, sin is horrible. Okay, so if you feel creepy, if you feel like some of those pictures were a bit disturbing, well then you should, because the sin is evil, sin is awful. Okay, that does it. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, you comment. I love to hear what you're thinking about these, okay? I've had some really great comments lately, so thanks for those. Subscribe, tell your friends and family about these videos, and let's see if we can get a nice community here learning the Summa Theologia. Okay, God bless you. Thanks for watching and participating. I'm Dave Palmer. This is St. Thomas Aquinas for everyone.